Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols Plus, a PlayStation podcast supplement. This is what episode number is this? I always forget. 87. It's 87. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined this week by a very special guest who agreed to come on the show to talk about video games media and journalism, which I'm very excited about. Editor-in-chief of The Escapist, Nick Calandra. Nick, thank you for joining me today.
For sure.
How are you?
Oh, not doing too bad. It's a Monday, but you know.
Yeah, it is. You have a nice little gaming chair, which I appreciate.
I do.
Do you enjoy it?
Yeah, I had a pretty crappy chair for a long time and got sent this as a review unit. We actually reviewed it on our podcast, The Escapist Show, and I happened to try to test the lean back functionality of that and fell out of the chair on live recording, so that was fun.
Oh, nice. Well, I ask only because I kind of want to get a gaming chair. I have, a nice little like office chair, but needs a little more support, I think.
Yeah.
But Nick, I wanted to have you on Sacred Symbols Plus. We're trying to do more interviews. People miss my old show, Fireside Chats, that I used to do, and I used to just invite a bunch of people on the show. So we're trying to kind of fuse those two things when we can. And I really wanted to talk to you because I'm really concerned about video games journalism. I'm really concerned about video games media. My working hypothesis on this is games media is ostensibly dying. I think it's obvious. And as someone who's inside, I want to know how you feel about the pulse of everything, your own website, your contemporaries and peers, and kind of how we got to this point. Because I don't want to like come in blowing smoke up anyone's ass, because I think my audience who's been with me for a long time will know, like I do speak my mind about these things, and I think there are some exceptions to the rule, and you can maybe make the case that The Escapist is going to, or is one of those exceptions. And the audience actually that wrote in had a lot of nice things to say about your website, and specifically the revival of your website, and we'll get into some of that. But
sure.
I want to kind of just start working from that uncomfortable place, because we do kind of come, or I think right now we're on diametrically opposed places in terms of our opinion on the outcome, and yet I think I'm able to be persuaded because I am now on the outside. So Nick, let me throw it over to you. Tell the audience who you are and kind of how you got to this point, and your kind of history in the industry and with video games and all that.
Sure. Yeah, so I've been covering games since 2009. I was a freshman in high school when I started, and essentially I just kind of grew up playing video games and was very introverted, and I kind of had an addiction to games. So at some point, my parents, like, kind of the helicopter parents, you got to stop playing video games, find something else to do, go outside. I'm like, well, what's to do outside? And so they kind of took the games away, and then I was like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna start writing about them, because why not? And so my father purchased a domain name for me, and I started up a little website called Titan Reviews, and didn't have a clue what I was doing, didn't know how to write, it was trash basically. Did that for a little bit, and actually there used to be an online website, and maybe you've heard of it, PSX Extreme.
Yeah, I remember that name.
Yeah. So I frequented that quite a bit because they had a series called The Week in Review, and people would kind of just go in and share what they've been up to every week and all that. And I kind of dug through that and found a couple guys that seemed to write well, and I thought, maybe they'll, want to write about, they're in here every week, maybe they'll want to write about games too with me. And, being a naive child that I was, invited them to come work on this with me. And turns out they did want to write about games, and we kind of started there. And funnily enough, they actually still work with me even today on The Escapist now. So we did that for a little bit. Then we started up a site called Velocity Gamer, and then we went and actually started up a site that became relatively well known called Only Single Player, or Only SP. So I did that from 2012 to 2016. One of the writers that works with me, Lachlan Williams, he's actually an English teacher in Australia, and so he really helped me hone my writing skills and everything over all this time. And we didn't really have any outside industry support. We did a lot of interviews with indie developers and all that, but never really got noticed for what we were doing, other than people that just wanted a website for single player games. So it was really just self-taught doing games journalism. I had applied to other sites and all that, but living in the Midwest, you don't really get a lot of opportunities to go work for those sites because you don't know the right people. And so we did that from 2012 to 2016, and then I was trying to finish up college from 2013 to 2017, and turns out running a website that requires 110% of your time while also trying to finish up school is quite the effort. So I started in business management for a degree, and then ended up getting a degree in multimedia journalism. And in 2016, I don't know what happened. Like we were growing, and then Google, something changed, and then everything just fell apart overnight almost with that site.
Interesting. So really dependent on SEO.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I mean, that's how OnlySP got started. Like I was at a hockey tournament up in Colorado, and one night I just kind of ideas sprung in my head, and I Googled single player video game website. Nothing. So then we started it, kind of thing. So it was pretty reliant on that. But we did a lot of unique feature. I mean, we gave indies more coverage than I think any other outlet out there, doing that kind of stuff. But anyways, so yeah, it kind of crashed overnight. I couldn't spend all my time on it, trying to finish up my degree, trying to get my life started. And then the traffic kind of dwindled, and also I just felt like I wasn't getting anywhere with it anymore. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, right? Because you're about to graduate college, and you're like, well, this is my dream job, but also I have to be realistic about, the possibilities here. Like a site that's doing 300,000, 500,000 visits a month isn't going to pay the bills. So I ended up quitting it. And then as a last ditch effort, I sold it to Enthusiast Gaming, who happens to be the parent company of The Escapists. OnlySP was actually the first site they ever acquired. And so I gave it up for about a year. And then Daniel Dwyer on GameSpot was doing some kind of documentary material when he would go and travel to the studios around the world for a series that he was doing on GameSpot at the time. And there was a scene where he was in Poland for the Witcher 3 coverage that he was doing, just kind of standing out in the countryside reporting on it from there. And that really inspired me, because I was like, wow, I've been covering games in my bedroom and my college dorm since 2009, and now I'm about to graduate in 2017. I want to get out and explore the world and go meet people and do this. And so we actually, a couple of buddies and I started up a Kickstarter to fund documentaries for what we ended up calling Gamumentary. So in October of 2017, I think, we pitched out a documentary, to a bunch of indie studios, and Runic Games at the time picked us up and wanted to do it with us. So we went and made that documentary, and then ran the Kickstarter. We raised $22,000 to fund that. And then we went and did documentaries on Darksiders, Kingdom Come Deliverance, quite a few other games as well. And after that, it was kind of back to well, I don't know what to do now. We funded this documentary. We're not going to get a ton of money from it because we released them for free. So I ended up selling that brand to Enthusiast Gaming as well. And then they brought me on as a full-time managing editor of video on The Escapist. They had a team reviving The Escapist before I came along, and then things happened with that team, and then I quite quickly ended up becoming an editor-in-chief of The Escapist.
Yeah, that was Russ Pitts and those guys, right? Yeah, Russ Pitts sucks. I'll just say that right off the bat. Russ Pitts sucks.
I didn't have the greatest of experiences working with him. One of the very first things that happened was he wanted to kind of take over our documentaries and was pretty much saying we sucked. And I was like, okay, nice working with you.
Yeah. I mean, it's, he's fucking nobody. I have nothing nice to say about that dude, but, I wanted, because it was interesting for you to get to the documentaries part of your story, and then kind of how you ended up back in games journalism. Cause I was kind of wondering what was so attractive to you at this time to continue to found and get into websites when the writing began to be increasingly on the wall. I mean, when I was at IGN in 2013 and 2014, it was obvious at that point to me that, and that's why we left at the end of 2014, was because it was we don't need to be here anymore. No offense. Right. To IGN, of course, they gave us everything. I mean, I love IGN. I wrote there for 12 years of my life, but it was fairly obvious that the 2002 IGN that I joined and the 2014 IGN that I left, at the very top of the industry, was becoming a husk, even if it was becoming more of a farm of content farm, relying on lots of chicanery and weird shit. And so I'm wondering, like, why were you attracted to that as opposed to like podcasting or YouTubing or Twitch streaming or something where there's a lot of competition, but your likelihood of succeeding there is certainly much higher?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the short of that is like I didn't have an audience to do that. You know, I up until this year or this past year, like I had never gotten on video and put my face out there. Like it was always pushing the content and working with people to build up their talent and everything. And I just didn't have the connections to do it, right? Like I spent 10 years of my career, you know, if you want to call it that, working with developers, and that's how we ended up getting the documentaries done, because I had built up so much rapport with indies and giving a lot of coverage like that and doing actually what I thought was quality work and everything. So when the opportunity opened up to kind of revive The Escapist, like I was in the same boat that like, you know, videos what sells. And even now on The Escapist, I mean, you know, most of our audience is still video focused, and we're kind of quietly rebuilding up the website a little bit. But I've always liked building up communities of people, and I've always put a lot of time into moderating that and really building up communities that are like friendly and positive and are interested in having real discussions about things. So I thought The Escapist might be a good opportunity for that. Like I had, obviously before I had taken it on, I had done a lot of research into like, here's what happened with The Escapist and here's what led to its downfall and all that. And at the same time, like even through all of that, like The Escapist, I think always had a really unique content lineup where it wasn't just, you know, rehashing news that every other site is doing. They have key talent that people come to follow specifically on the site, and we all work together and collaborate and do things. So I wanted to continue that legacy of The Escapist, and also like I think what a lot of people do when they come into games media and either start up a site or revive a site is like, well, we're going to come in and fix games media, right? And I don't have that mindset. I'm just like, you know, if we create good content, create unique content, and foster a community of people that are willing to engage with one another and get away from all this crap on toxic social media stuff, like they're going to show up. And so, I mean, it's taken, you know, the first year of reviving The Escape was literally just me communicating with the audience, because interestingly enough, like, you know, The Escapist has a 1 million subscriber YouTube channel, and they had never been communicated with that there was a website. Most of them didn't even know it existed. And also, like, you know, I'm sure you've seen it too, like the perception of The Escapists from the Gamergate stuff and all that, like that it's all right and all this stuff. It's like, you really get into that and you start working, it's like that none of that was really true. Like, you know, like even the forums, like, you know, we were working with a community manager when I took over, and he's like, well, I need to fix and make everybody better, you know. And I'm like, you can't do that with people. You know, nobody's gonna like if you come in and tell them, I think you're all awful, let me fix you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course not.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's going well. I mean, are you? Yeah. Like I'm wondering.
Sure.
Is it sustainable?
We're getting there. So obviously, I've always worked with a shoestring budget. You know, I worked for myself until I was hired full time by Enthusiast Gaming to do this. So I know what it kind of takes to make $1 with ad revenue, and I think that's really important for anybody running a website. And unfortunately, certainly, I think a lot of people running and writing for websites just don't know how hard it is to make an advertising dollar. And so I'm a heavy advocate on my Twitter all the time about we have to move away from the advertising model if websites and in-game, you know, media is going to survive in general, because everybody expects their content to be free, and we've devalued content so much that people are like, the expectation is, well, you're going to spend, you know, a whole entire week working on a video and I just want it for free now. So what we've done is we've gone and created a hybrid model where, you know, we have ad revenue. Now we have subscription model where people can subscribe to support us directly. And then we have the live stream model where people, you know, send in donations and super chats and all that stuff. So we're actually in the best position we've been in since I took over the site.
That's great to hear. I mean, it's interesting because we're heavily supported on Patreon. Mm-hmm. And that to me has always seems to have been the future. I even saw IGN tweet out a few days ago, like that they're looking to kind of revive a pay model. And that pay model isn't new. I mean, IGN Insider and IGN Prime were very old programs when I was there. IGN Insider had already existed even when I was brought on in 2002. So that seems to be the future for me too, because I exchanged massive reach at IGN for a more intimate relationship with the audience, but they pay for the content, even though, like you said, there is an expectation of things being free. And the way to kind of buttress that is to also make everything free.
Right.
So the relationship is totally voluntary and assertive, or I'm sorry, affirmative rather, which is good. It's an affirmative, positive relationship. And that's kind of what I see coming out of you guys too, because I feel like my impression of the Escapist, even when I was at IGN, which is the old Escapist, is it was always like a weird website, and in a good way. It seems to me like it's, and I'm not saying this just because you're on here, because I did say what I really like I feel generally at the beginning, of course, about the industry as a whole, but there are certain brands that can survive, I think. And I think the big guys will survive based on SEO farming and scraping, IGN, GameSpot. And then I think there are a bunch of websites in the middle that are already, most of them have gone, the 1UPs and everything, they're gone. And then I think that there are these like random websites, like Push Square is a website I really like that I talk about a lot. Gamatsu is a website that's really valuable. Your website, like where they have these different brands, different identities, and different expectations, where if we weren't doing 20, 30, 40 million, uniques a month at IGN, we weren't like in good shape. And that's totally unrealistic. But I kind of wonder, with your experience and having watched it and kind of watched the situation unfold and get to where we are in 2021 with you having, more than 10 years experience in the industry, how did we get to this point? And I actually have an interesting question that poses this from the audience, from a guy named Pair of Shoes. And he wrote in on Patreon and says, "Hey guys, hope all is well. Games journalism has become extremely exclusionary, selective, contradictory, and even flat out hostile to actual gamers. What are your thoughts on how to reverse this? I followed gaming news since I was 14, reading countless sites, articles, forums, etc. And I noticed when it started to go towards what it is now back in 2009 and 2010, when I was about 22 or 23. That's when I noticed it getting bad and inflammatory. It's honestly sad to see something you thought was great take a terrible turn into something that hates the people who play games and is usually ignorant to any topic they speak of, showing very little to zero knowledge of gaming history." I think there's actually a lot in there that we can discuss, and I'm not entirely sure I agree with the timeline. I think it happened even later than that. Right. But I think 2009, 2010 might actually be like part of what I would look at as a golden era of games journalism. And we can talk about that in a little while too. But what do you think caused this clear, demonstrable, hostile takeover of games journalism that has happened in parallel in a lot of different ways, in sports journalism, certainly in political and social journalism, to the point where people have to, or a lot of people feel like they need to find people like me, frankly, on alternate platforms in order to not be talked down to or disparaged or judged. What the hell's going on out there?
Yeah, I mean, as somebody that's always been, on the outside of LA and New York and all that stuff, it's been interesting. Because I know when I started in like 2009, like it was still relatively hostile, and like, people, it was more about clickbait back then, I think, because I remember, like when N4G was a big place to share your news and all that, every site was doing the clickbait of like, 900p versus 1080p in a game and showing us screenshot comparison articles, and people were already fighting about that stuff. And so I think, just over time, like with Twitter and everything, and people's opinions becoming more public, because, we didn't used to have Twitter, I guess we had Twitter, but it wasn't like as widely used as it was until like, I don't know, maybe 2012, I think, is when Twitter really started popping off. So I don't think games media is as hostile as a lot of people think it is. I think there's a lot of smaller sites and medium sites out there that are really like fun to read and have good audiences. I think it's a very select group of people on Twitter that drive a lot of this stuff. And people, I think, because I get people in my mentions all the time, like, well, I hate games media. I was like, well, then go find games media you like, right? And that's kind of what you said. People are coming to you because they want to have reasonable discussions and talk about these things. And you know, I have a bit of a biased opinion on it because I haven't had great experiences with people in games media either. I mean, hell, when I took over The Escapist, one of the first things that happened was I put out my editor's letter, and like, I've never interacted with a lot of people, and it's the same people that come after you that I've seen. I've never interacted with them, and they had bad things to say about me. I'm like, what? Another time happened was I asked for feedback from the current readership of The Escapist. Like, it's, you know, the site has gone through so many different forms or whatever. So I asked for feedback on like what the current readership wanted, and a former editor, she came into my mentions and snarked me. And I was just like, what's that for? I'm just asking for feedback from our audience. And then all of a sudden it became about how I don't respect a woman. And then her friends started coming in and dogpiling me. I was like, what the fuck is this about? So I blocked them. And of course, you know, because that's what they tell you to do, right? You don't want to talk to somebody, you have every right to block them. Well, I block them, and then they continued to talk about me, and then tried to spin a narrative about how The Escapist was in bad hands again. And I'm like, you can't win, right?
No, you certainly can't win.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I've spent my entire career, you know, highlighting indie devs, highlighting human stories, being positive, but I'm also critical of media too. And because I'm critical, I think I've been kind of pushed to the wayside and blacklisted by people. Well, I know I have for a fact, but yeah.
Are you able to get? How is your relationship with publishers?
Oh, that's the thing. Like, I've always had a great relationship with developers and publishers. We wouldn't be able to do the documentaries if I didn't. We don't do a lot of AAA stuff. We focus on indies, but I mean, a great example to show like how close knit the games media stuff is. I mean, we've done documentaries on Divinity: Original Sin, Darkest Dungeon, and Surging, some of the biggest indie games in the industry. And whenever these documentary lists are written, like about people that do documentaries, I'm never included in those. Not once.
No, of course. I mean,
they never cover our documentaries.
You have to understand you're never going to get your due. I mean, I accepted that a long time ago.
Right. So
yeah.
I kind of just stopped caring. And especially with The Escapist, now that I have a platform that people actually read, you know, we've been really spending our time rebuilding it into something positive and fun for everybody. And like, we still don't get any recognition for that. And I don't expect recognition for it, but you know, whenever we post something that somebody may not like, it somehow turns into like we're Nazis and alt-right, and it's like have you looked at who works on my site?
Yeah, it's first of all, I was interested to see Marty Sleva, an old friend of mine, pop up on your site. I still haven't talked to him really since you know, there's a lot of shit swirling around about him. I don't even want to get into it on the show because I don't know. Sure. I want to talk to him first and see what he has to say, but it was interesting to see him pop up and some other names pop up. And yeah, I'm looking at my notes now as the audience wrote in, because again, the pair of shoes wrote in and said 2009, 2010. I'm like, to me, I feel like it began bubbling 2012, 2013. I think in hindsight, I hate to give this credit, but I think Gamergate really ruptured the industry in some way. But I've often said, and it's not a popular point of view with the games media types, but I think it's true, is that they're largely responsible for what ended up happening because they couldn't help themselves. And I've said over and over again, I remember clear as fucking day being in a meeting room with IGN leadership. It was like I was senior editor at the time. It was like all the editors and chiefs and everything. And we were asking, like, well, what do we do? Do we write a letter about Gamergate? And I'm like, just ignore it. Like, you just ignore it and it'll go away. There's all this shit on Twitter all the time. And you just had really, frankly, just very unintelligent people making very unintelligent moves, like Lee Alexander writing the gamers are not your audience thing. And I'm like, oh no, not because she doesn't have a right to say what she wants, of course, but because it's just, you could just see it was popping off at that time. And that was ironically right when I was extracting myself from games media. It was ironic, you know, it was a total happenstance. But at that point, I feel like I look back and it's almost unrecognizable, and it makes me sad. And what you say is really powerful, because I want to be able to have open and honest conversations. The way to do that is often to be critical and start at critical places and then work your way towards the middle. And I invite people on the show all the time. Like, I would love to have some of these people on the show, and I would do it in 2 seconds, have them on here, but they won't, because they can't defend their positions, mostly because their positions are really terrible and can't stand up to scrutiny, but also because I think they understand that under their own scrutiny, they've kind of overseen the destruction of games media. And it didn't have to happen. There are other mediums, entertainment and enthusiast mediums, that haven't crumbled quite like this, although they're all under political strain and stress. I wonder how much you think politics plays into this, because I really feel that politics is 90% of it. And people have often asked, how did it get to this point? It's when you hire yourself over and over and over again. And then before you know, you're surrounded by yourself. That's
something I've noticed so much. And as far as the Gamergate stuff goes, like, I had no involvement in it. We were running OnlySP from 2012 to 2016. And we denounced it at the time because there was just nothing good coming out of it, really. There was no like real discussion happening about ethics or anything. And then the things that I had colleagues that I knew that were very negatively affected by it.
Yeah, me too.
So it was just something that was like, I'm not gonna validate whatever this is, right? And, you know, if people want to talk about ethics, and talk about ethics, don't make a move, you know, stupid movement out of it. Yeah, I think politics has some of it to do with it. Like, I guess the thing that I've always wondered is just like, you know, if you're gonna write about games, like, why are you disparaging like your own audience, right? Because gamer has become a word to make fun of people now. And, you know, and it's like, for me, like, games has brought me a ton of great people into my life. I've gone to conventions where everybody's friendly with everybody. Like, games have done so much for so many people, and then to label people that have the gamer identity or whatever, it's like, it just feels like being back in junior high and high school, where like you were weird if you played video games, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
how old are you?
I'm 26, just turned 26 yesterday.
Oh, okay. So you even really missed like the true era of, you know, I'm 36. So like really, when it was really like not okay. You know? Yeah.
I mean, I went through it. Like, people were bullied in my school. I was bullied for playing games. You know, just because I had long hair, like, people were like, oh, he sells drugs and plays games. Like, what? I've never even had a beer until college. But yeah, so getting back to your point though, like, I think politics definitely has something to do with it. And I've also been quite outspoken about there being a relatively well-known clique in games media. So actually doing the research into Gamergate and all that, and seeing like that Game Journal Pro list, and I'm like, well, I'm not surprised by any of the names in here. You know, if you look at Twitter, it's very obvious now that, you know, they're always the ones that are dogpiling people they disagree with and everything. Yeah,
of course.
So
they act horrible. They act horribly.
Yeah. I'd agree with that, and I've called it out. Like, I got blocked by Jason Schreier not too long ago for calling him for calling him a gatekeeper to games media, which I very much think he is. You know, he's Liana Rupert from Game Informer has done some great reporting on Cyberpunk and all this stuff, and he just kept going after her, and nobody really spoke up for her in that clique. But yeah, I mean, like, the same people are hired over and over again at websites. Like, you know, I've watched people leave Polygon and they immediately go to work at IGN or another outlet now. It's like, there's no new voices.
Yeah, it's totally
unless
incestuous.
You go to YouTube and stuff. Yeah. Because that's the only place you can get in anymore, it feels like. And so actually that's one of my goals with The Escapist too, not to self-promote too much, but with The Escapist, what I wanted to do was basically bridge that gap between old and new talent. So we have Yahtzee, we have people like Jack Packard, Marty, and and I have people that worked with me at OnlySP and Gamergate working with not Gamergate, OnlySP and Gamementary with me. And so we've brought them over to The Escapist, and we're pairing them up with old talent to raise up new voices, which, you know, how many people in games media have you said, let's raise up new voices, and then they give the jobs to their friends?
Yeah, well, they pay a lot of lip service to that, and then it just seems like mostly white straight people in the industry, their friends, get hired over and over again. Now, I don't mind that at all. I mean, I think the best man or best woman wins the job. I believe in meritocracy, but it's a lot of hypocrisy. I found really interesting though, Nick, that you said that you think it's politics is some of it. I think, I think politics is pretty much all of it. And the way I arrive at that is simply through Occam's razor. It's simply through logical observation. Mm-hmm. If you have a bunch of gamers together, right, at an outlet, and you mix them all up and you're like, who likes role-playing games, who likes sports games, who likes shooters and CRPGs and all this kind of stuff, and you get all these different Venn diagrams of people, and then you're like, who's a liberal and who's a conservative?
Yeah.
And then it's a circle, and that's not a coincidence, because that would be pretty much impossible to happen for that to happen in a staff of, let's say, 20 at IGN. That's like virtually impossible. You have to imagine if it's just a coin flip, or let's just say if it's like it's a 4-sided die where it's like liberal, conservative, moderate, and unaligned. You would still get, on average 4 of each out of 20. So it's, to me, I feel like politics, and specifically the lead up to the Trump era and then the Trump era, this unusual victory. Right. Now I don't think it's relevant one way or the other, but the audience knows I'm not a Trump fan or a Trump supporter, but I've often said that I was the closest thing that games media knew to one, because they're so inoculated to the real world that's where the venom to me comes from. I also think, interestingly, that a little bit of it, if we want to say most of it is politics, a little bit of it is incredible amounts of professional envy and jealousy. And this really boils over in political media, and I watch it every day because I love politics and I follow it. But that is completely what's happening, especially with the recent hullabaloo with Substack and all of the things going on. Substack, by the way, for people that don't know, is a really interesting way for writers to it's like Patreon for writers, basically. And it's very popular, but you see like all of the most popular people there are getting attacked, and it seems like it's just professional envy. And I think you take those two things together and it's pretty unholy and creates pretty sinister outcomes. So I'm a little more bearish than you are, let's say, on the outcome, because we now see the snake eating itself, which I got to admit, I love seeing shit like that. I'm totally about the Schadenfreude. I say that all the time. I just live it silently. I don't feel the need to inject. Sometimes I like write a little tweet and then I delete it, before I send it.
I think I'll push back a little bit. I think games media in general has gotten actually, let's say, in some areas better. I think before people like kind of ignored a lot of like the important topics to cover, and it was really a lot of just enthusiast press. So I think we have gotten better about reporting on things like crunch and abuse and all that kind of stuff in the industry. The reporting on it can be questionable, because I've challenged reports on that too, like even with Jason Schreier and his reporting on Cyberpunk crunch and all that. I was like, well, all we have is like the industry relies too much on anonymous sources to cover these things, so nobody really knows what's true. You would like to believe like, you're getting the same side of this, or the full picture on these stories, but often I don't feel like I am. Even though I fully am aware that crunch is happening at CD Projekt Red and stuff like that. Another one is like the current 6 days in Fallujah coverage, right? IGN ran a big report on how it's affecting people. And in that same interview, which was a good interview for the most of it, in that same interview, she interviewed her friend and didn't disclose it. I'm like, well, that's a very obvious conflict of interest. You can't do a report interviewing your closest friends that you ran a podcast with. And so I think, in the pursuit of like trying to make the industry better for people and more inclusive and accessible, it's just gotten so toxic. Instead of informing people, it's just antagonistic all the time. Yes. And so for like me with our coverage, like people are like, well, Russ put out that comment about not injecting politics into their coverage, and he got completely destroyed over it, right? Well, interesting. Like we kind of have the same thought process, but it's not that we don't cover or talk about politics. It's like, all right, instead of writing the report, like writing a report being condescending and attacking people, let me give a voice to somebody that can show you something interesting about a game and how it's diverse and inclusive to people. And so like a great editorial Stacey Henley wrote for us was the difference between Spider-Man and Spider-Man Miles Morales, and how like in the gameplay mechanics of it, it showed a different cultural perspective just on how they presented the world of that game. And like people will read that stuff, and I think people like want to be exposed to different cultures and learn about them, and be more accepting and inclusive to everybody, especially even with things like accessibility, right? Like You know, I think it's super interesting how the Xbox controller that they came out with made it possible for so many more people to play games. So you know, the disconnect is, well, we want people to learn about these things, and we want people to understand it and accept it and be more open and inclusive to people, but at the same time, let's attack everybody that's maybe a little bit ignorant to it or doesn't agree with it in some ways. And it's become such a hostile environment for, you know, I try not to use labels, but if you want to call it progressive politics or whatever, like it's supposed to be, in my opinion, informing people on, you know, on these different things and making them interested and knowledgeable about it. But instead it's become like a hot topic to attack people all the time when it shouldn't be that.
Well, if the shoe fits, first of all, I mean, it is progressive politics. There's nothing necessarily wrong with progressive politics. It's just, I mean, I think there's a lot wrong with progressive politics personally, but it really is irrelevant. It's about presenting some sort of balance, as if you don't have, it's in itself gatekeeping, because it's political and behavioral gatekeeping for people that just want to play games. I don't have any problem with politics being in video games or there being political coverage of games. And people will know that at IGN, I did a lot of political coverage of video games. And I just wrote in Twinbreaker last year a very political game. So I like politics. I want politics to be out there. But when I worked at IGN, like the things I used to write at IGN, you would never in a million years see there anymore. You know, not only the 50,000 word history of Naughty Dog that I wrote, that is still the definitive history of the studio almost 10 years after I wrote it, which is crazy that that's the point, is that there's almost no real journalism going on. But also you have this incredibly hostile demeanor that is mirrored in politics, and especially in progressive elite politics, where you don't want to find people, you don't want to find common ground. You don't want to forgive. You don't want to understand that some people disagree with you. You don't, like, I was actually talking about this with my girlfriend recently, where I'm like, I just totally 100% decline this narrative that there are a lot of people in the United States, for instance, or in the world, that hold or harbor bigoted hate. I don't believe it. I think that sometimes there's misunderstanding. Right. First of all, I think on the fringes, there's obviously bigoted hate. And then I think a lot of times it's just misunderstanding, misconstrual, not, you know, lack of education or personal kind of confluence of opinions or a conflict of opinions. And that most people are generally good, decent, and kind.
And I live in, sorry to cut you, but I have a good aside. I live in Kansas City, Missouri, right? Missouri's a very red state. And I live in a county that has voted red, and voted even red in this last election. And a lot of people around me voted for Trump, and I didn't vote for Trump. I think he's a moron, to be fair. But some of the most interesting discussions I've had is like being at the dog park and just talking with people that are Trump supporter, and asking them like, why are you voting for him? And then they ask me why I'm voting for somebody else. And, you know, we have interesting discussions. And, you know, if you paint everybody, you know, that voted for Trump or whatever as like this awful person, it's like, well, one of the best examples I can think of is, you know, living in the Midwest, and with the college that I went to, I had to drive through incredibly small towns to get to my college. And when you, like, one of the things, not to divulge too much away from games media, but I think it's a good talking point. It's like when people talk about a $15 minimum wage for the entire country, right? Well, if you go and talk to somebody in a small town where they don't have a Walmart or anything there, it's just local mom and pop shops. You tell them about a $15 minimum wage, it's like, well, we'll be out of business, you know, and not enough people visit us. So that for me, it's like, it's just getting as much of a wide range of perspective as possible. And that's the only way I think you learn, you know, about other people's struggles and everything like that. And, you know, when you're just constantly rehashing the same opinions over and over and over again in media, like, you don't get that.
Well, that's why I really respected what IGN was doing a couple of days ago until recently, where they had the 6 Days in Fallujah piece by one of their writers. Then Ryan McCaffrey went and talked to, you know, the devs and got the footage and all of that. And then they basically just threw him under the bus, wrote basically the same article again. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? It almost makes me hanker to be at IGN just for another day, you know, just to be like, what the fuck are you doing? Especially to one of, frankly, your last notable editors that people visit you for, you know, that are not just SEO farms or people trying to sell you commerce links, but a dude who people actually like and you're throwing him under the bus when he actually did the legwork. It just goes to show you that even good journalism, which he did, bends at the will of this political ecosystem that is taken over games media. And just to show people how much it's changed, like, I was an avowed Bush Republican when I was hired at IGN. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like something I hid. Everyone knew. Right. I have American history tattoos on my arms. I used to fly, I mean, famously at IGN, owned by Fox at the time, I had a huge Ron Paul sign and a huge Don't Tread on Me flag at my desk. Mm-hmm. This was not a problem. I was friends with everyone. Some of the same people that are now pretend that I'm an enemy, you know, and this wasn't a hidden part of who I was. It was what made me interesting, I think, to people, to readers, was like, wow, who's this guy? And he's saying something different. And you would think that even just in the name, I mean, at some point, maybe you have to kind of appreciate the principle, if there is any, to say, like, we don't believe in what this dude says or this kind of shit so much that we will not give it a platform. But you would think out of survival, you would even want to be like, well, we should, like, have a bunch of different kinds of conversations. And so I'm wondering, and we got a letter about it, but I guess, well, I'll let Ben Williams kind of ask it himself here on Patreon. He says, hey, Nick, Colin has mentioned previously that he is skeptical of new traditional games media sites. Why is The Escapist different, and how will you succeed in a landscape that seems to be mainly growing through individual content creators and not major websites? So you kind of answered half of that, because you still have Yahtzee and a bunch of people in kind of this new conglomeration of people. But how are you going to present these different opinions? How are you going to give rise to what I think traditional games media doesn't think exists, which is an audience that actually wants to hear everything?
Right. Well, so I'll turn the question around a little bit, right? Because I think, interestingly, when I have criticized games media, and, you know, you'll get some people in there like, well, you know, what if I pitch you? I'm conservative. Are you going to publish what I wrote? I was like, well, you need to pitch me. You know, I don't know.
Right.
And I also, like, you know, one of the questions I pose that I don't think anybody's been able to answer is like, well, if you're going to write a conservative article, let's say, you know, like, what are you going to pitch me that's conservative? And a lot of people just don't have an answer to that. And also, like, the same thing happens when you ask, like, you're going to pitch me a progressive article, right? What does that even mean? You know, if you're gonna write about a game, write about the game. And so, I mean, you know, when I think about it, I guess I just have a hard time answering that question, because I don't know, right? Like, I'm writing an op-ed right now challenging a 6 days petition, which I think is utterly ridiculous that game developers are signing that, even though I have a ton of criticism for that game and how it's being marketed. And I'm spending a lot of time on it, because I know as soon as I put that out, I'm going to get attacked over it. It's just going to happen, because I dared question, you know, I know the dialogue that's going to come from that is like, well, he supports war crimes. Absolutely not. I didn't support the war in Iraq. But I also think a game that's a documentary about real people and real stories is worth being told. So, like, allowing I guess we just don't write our articles with, like, I'm progressive, so this is okay, or I'm conservative, so this is okay. Like, we write things that, like I said, we think people will find interesting and want to read. And we also don't write articles that are just picking out, you know, random Twitter user with 2 followers on Twitter that said something bigoted and making a whole article about it, because what's the point? It's not interesting. You know, it's just some idiot on the internet.
But let me push back. Like, if you wrote about a labor issue, right, there is a conservative viewpoint and a liberal viewpoint of every labor issue. Like, yeah. I would always, and I have always, tackled labor issues generally from a conservative point of view. And everyone knows that. So those are I'm not saying you go in and say, like, well, what is the political ramifications of, you know, Bowser's kidnapping of Princess Peach? But if you're studying the politics of games and the making of games, then that is political. And also just the inherent political nature of video gaming tendencies and what you can withstand in seeing a video game. I mean, we're seeing that with 6 Days in Fallujah. I see 6 Days in Fallujah personally. I was pro Iraq war. I'm totally, I mean, everyone's against the Iraq war now, and I was totally wrong, but I was pro war for that war. It was a mistake. But I look at that and I'm like, this sounds great. And then I look at the interviews that IGN's posting and I'm like, well, I really don't give a fuck what Rami Ismail has to say about it. He's an Egyptian Dutch dude with no real connection to it. Here are dudes talking on the record because they were there, and that's a little more interesting. And it's also what I said to Rami saying, you know, everyone's like, you know, everyone got mad at that guy, Peter Tomte, for saying like, no one wants to play a game about an Iraqi civilian. And I'm like, they don't. Like, if you want to make that game, then make it in the indie space. But a studio like Tripwire is not going to make that game. And, or yeah, it's Tripwire, right? And
Highwire.
Yeah, Tripwire are the man-eater guys. And to me, I'm like, then Rami is a millionaire, and someone who just can't stop talking about this should put his money where his mouth is and make that game and see how much people want to see that interpretation, because you can find a market for almost anything. But they're right when they say that there is no mass market for that story. And it's true. And that shouldn't really be a dramatic thing to say. It doesn't mean that you can't have, like you said, a lot of political problems with the game from an interpretive point of view, from a historical point of view, from a war crime point of view. But the second that you, and again, the war crime thing, I think, and this is where another political thing gets sucked in, like, there's no real evidence that happened, like, one way or the other. It was used as it's supposed to be used, but used as a weapon is not clear. And even bringing that up, like you said, which is true, because I had Steve Bannon on a few weeks ago, who's a military journalist, and he taught me that. I didn't even know that. He's like, there's actually no, you know, when you look at the paperwork and look at all the stuff from the Pentagon and the Congress and stuff, but you can't even bring those things up because they're inconvenient facts and inconvenient pieces of truth. But even then, I still feel like the Marines and the soldiers deserve to have their story told, and that it's virtually impossible, not virtually, it is impossible to tell the entire texture of what happened at the Second Battle of Fallujah in a video game. And I think that that's an unreasonable point of view. So I think people's politics are bearing down like an iron hammer on the industry. And it's like you said, and I'm interested in this, and I guess I have your opinion on it, but I want you to kind of elaborate. I'm really concerned too, dude, the killer's in the house, guys. This is kind of like what I'm saying, like the killer's in the house. The dudes who are trying to actually cancel your games are in the industry. It's not even Jack Thompson or Fox News or evangelical Christians. It's liberal game developers. It's as if the pendulum swung so far to the other side so quickly. It's a fucking guillotine just swinging. And I'm wondering what you make of that. Like, what do you think of it? I just feel like it's kind of, in an attempt with 6 Days in Fallujah, for instance, of not indoctrinating everyone, it just seems like it's more indoctrination. The answer is just more of a different kind of indoctrination. Right.
Yeah. So I see, like with 6 Days, I see both sides of it, right? Because we have had a lot of games, you know, Call of Duty and all that, like they don't put a name to these people. You're just shooting, you know, random characters on a screen, and either you know, Russian or people from the Middle East or whatever. So I can understand that, like, people want to be represented and have other stories told rather than just being shot on screen all the time. That I completely understand and empathize with. The petitions to cancel it, though, is like, no, come on. But to get back to your other question about, like, you know, how do we cover these different political topics? Well, that's something I've been fighting with for years, and kind of why I mean, even on the Escape, is like we've kind of gotten out of journalism and more into storytelling, commentary, and critique, because I've often found people just that have challenging reports of these things will not talk about it. A great one is unionization, right? The games industry is always bringing up unionization, and I've done documentaries and I've talked to people off the record that are like, I don't know how I feel about it, but I'm afraid to voice my opinions because I'm going to get attacked over it, and it's just not worth it. And I've tried to do stories talking about those things, and people won't even go on the record to challenge, you know, like, yes, unionization is a good thing. How do we get there? Well, people won't even talk about how we get there.
Right. And also about the potential negatives of unionization. I have no problem with private sector unions, is like, that's up to the companies and the people that are involved. But there's massive negative ramifications, and you're seeing that in journalism, especially with political journalism. Like Huffington Post Canada unionized and were laid off, all of them, the next week for doing it. So I'm not saying that you want to, like, necessarily act like that, but I mean, I've said for a long time, Nick, that I've had many, many, many people come up to me, talk to me, email me, and tell me like I'm a conservative or I'm a Republican or I'm a libertarian. I'm afraid of saying anything. I'll never forget it. The first time a dude said it to me was at GDC, probably 10 or 12 years ago. He worked at Telltale Games and he pulled me aside and was like, thank you so much for talking about these issues, because it just makes me feel like I'm not alone in the industry. And I'm like, man, I wonder where that guy is now, because, you know, we saw what happened with Troy Leavitt, for instance, and over at Avalanche Software, and how fact-free that was and how libelous it was. And I talked to Troy privately quite a bit, and I hope to have him on the show at some point. But one thing I did say to him, and he didn't respond to this particular comment, but I did say it, was he strikes me as the kind of person that would take the fall to protect his team, and that there's way more texture to this story. And that he's just way too nice of a person. But, you know, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's kind of my take on it. But we did have a letter here. And I thought this was an interesting one from Bono Clay over on Patreon. He says, hey, Colin and Nick, why do game media outlets seem to consistently fail at basic journalism practices? He says, for example, Troy Leavitt pointed out how Kotaku failed to accurately report on his actual position for the Harry Potter game, and they didn't even contact him for a comment. Do you think this is just laziness, poor training, or is it agenda driven? So I can tell you, Bono, and we talked about this a couple of years ago when we were uninvited from PAX. We were first given a PAX streaming theater for our show, which means we were one of the biggest shows at PAX that year. And then they just removed us and then never told us why. So for people that were not there and don't remember that. When they wrote about us, Kotaku wrote about us there too, and they didn't reach out to me for comment, which is unbelievable. I mean, I was a journalist for many years. That you reach out for comment. It's just part of it. So I got to go back and see if they've even updated those stories, because I bet you they haven't. And if they don't, I'm going to have to take maybe a little dunk on them. But what do you think about even because I know you guys are saying you're trying to get away from maybe hardcore literal journalism, get more into enthusiast press again. But these things are important, and I really feel like the concerted character assassination on Troy Leavitt from Liam Robertson, who is really an unsavory, sinister dude in the industry. I mean, I don't hold any punches. I don't have anything. I don't owe anyone anything anymore, and I don't need any of these people. He is an unsavory, sinister dude, and started this ball rolling on this innocent person. I'm wondering how you felt about that situation, and also about how encapsulated it was when he basically very calmly said, and I had already known this, I just didn't say anything at the time, which is like, you're not even getting his position on the team, right? What do you think about all that?
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted publicly that the reporting on that was shameful. Because one of the funniest things was, like, you know, I don't remember which outlet it was, but I mean, they linked the videos where they say he said certain things, and then I go and watch the video. Like, one of the things they quoted was that he's anti-feminist, and then you click on the video and you watch it, and then he literally says he's pro-feminism, just not certain brands of it, which is like, maybe I won't tweet that publicly, but I mean, like, can't the same thing be said about masculinity? Like, there's like positive masculinity, and there's absolutely toxic masculinity. And like the whole thing became about how it was really weird to me, because like he criticized Anita, but he wanted to talk to her. He had videos where he said he wanted to talk to her.
She would never do an interview, like an interview where anyone challenged her.
And then he showed a clip of her being really nasty to somebody at a conference, and then he's like, well, she made it pretty clear she's not going to talk to me, so I guess I'm done talking about her then. But he never said he was anti-feminist. When he covered the Gamergate stuff, like, you know, whatever you think about Gamergate, like, I don't believe it was really about ethics in journalism, or if it was,
I don't either.
They had no leadership to say, you know, get people on track and actually make a movement, right? But his entire video I watched it. His entire video was like, here's what happened with the start of Gamergate, and 10 outlets or something like that, which I didn't even know, all posted the same article on the same day almost about how gamers are dead. And they're all opinion pieces. Like, I think that's kind of weird, even though I had nothing to do with any of that, right?
Well, the whole Game Journo Pro thing is real. I was never on it, which is amazing. So I had no insight into like where that kind of stuff happened, but I think sometimes conspiracies are rooted in truth, you know?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, like he really just criticized the media in that video. And with data and facts to back it up. And, you know, to be fair, in criticism of him, like he kind of did exactly what he was criticizing the games media of, and kind of overlooked all the bad shit that happened with Gamergate and all the harassment. And then another video that people were making fun of, like, it's okay to be a gamer. It was literally just about saying like, hey, it's okay to identify as a gamer. Don't feel bad because you play video games. That was all he said in the video. And the press, yeah, I mean, all the stories written about him just kind of crafted this narrative. And then I pointed out directly that, like, hey, if you go and look at X outlet that cover this and go look at Y outlet that cover this and, you know, Z outlet that cover this, they all like have the same exact links to the same exact videos at the same exact timestamp. And as a journalism, you know, somebody with a bachelor's in journalism who like worked on a magazine and fact checked students that I worked with, like, that's a very clear case of like, you didn't look at this, you just parroted exactly what the other outlets said. And I've always had a problem with that. So yeah, and you know, there's outlets that he's an alt-right in the title with no evidence to back it up.
Yeah, it's just defamation. I mean, I'm called that all the time too, even though you couldn't even name one position that is a far right position that I hold. But okay,
right, I've been called outright as well. I mean, when we did the Kingdom Come Deliverance documentary, one of the things we covered in that was that the whole studio was basically called racist by the games media. And that was all based on a Eurogamer review that said that the Silk Road traveled through Prague. It did not.
No, it didn't. And that was the wrong, you know, Warhorse was the wrong studio to fuck with in that regard. Not only because they made them, these critiques just brought more attention to the game, made them filthy rich, and they sold themselves to Deep Silver, and now all those people are millionaires that were heads of the studios, but because it was just ahistoric. It's about like a 13 square mile piece of Bohemia in like the 14th century. There just weren't any black people there. It's okay. You know, like, it's okay. Like, it's,
well, I mean, the argument was that it's a game, so why can't there be? And it's like, well, they're trying to really dig into history. So I don't know, like, could they have done it? Sure.
I guess.
But I mean, like, when we went and talked to the studio, like, they didn't do it to not be racist. They promised Kickstarter backers a historically backed game, and that's what they delivered. And that whole thing was wild to me. But anyway, so like I talked to Dan Vavra and I talked to the studio about like, what effect does that have on you as a studio when you're trying to finish a game and there's a narrative being painted about you as being racist and awful people. And I gave them the platform to talk about it. And then like Reset Era at the time shared the documentary. And then all of a sudden it, like, some people were like really friendly. And then all of a sudden it became very like, oh, well, he's supporting alt-right and all this bullshit. And then people were trying to dox me. And I was like, what the fuck? I'm like, I'm never coming back here again.
Yeah, no, it's best to not, here's the thing. I want to have these conversations with people, but they have to understand that I'm not going to hold punches against them. I just want them on this show. I want them to defend their stances. Mm-hmm. You know, if I was positive I was right, I would be glad to tell someone on their own platform how wrong they were. You know, like, it would be, I would love to do that. So it is a little strange that's the other thing, is that the two sides or multiple sides don't talk. And so it inoculates each other from any sort of reasonable conversation, which is why, like, the audience knows this about me, but when I watch cable news, I pretty much only watch MSNBC. And the last month or two, when I've been working out, I've been watching this show Rising on YouTube, which is like a socialist basically show. Because it's like, I need to hear something that I don't agree with. And some of the things I do agree with. And so it challenges your own worldview. That's always been the way I've carried myself. And I don't understand why you don't want to be that way. And I feel like it's kind of like a cabal in some sense, in that they're all protecting each other. It's like an old school. It's like an old school, like, pre-labor union mercantile kind of situation where, like, the only way they can protect themselves is to just obliterate everyone else. And
yeah, well, I mean, I mean, watching, I wasn't the only one to speak up on the the Troy Levitt coverage, and some smaller people I saw did too. But I mean, people are afraid to challenge this stuff. Like, you can't be afraid to if you don't challenge media, then it just becomes propaganda. And it's the same thing they're complaining about, right? Like, you know, they don't like propaganda, but hey, you can't challenge our work. That's the same thing. And even with like the 6 days coverage, like I said, the IGN interview provided some great viewpoints, just like you said, that from people that were there in Fallujah, or, you know, people of Muslim descent that had their opinions to share on it, which is great. And then you didn't disclose that you interviewed your friend who's a soldier in this, which actually, to be frank, and I called it lazy reporting, because every other games media outlet that did an interview on that used the same guy from the military for the source.
Yeah, because he's in the games industry and he's the only person talking about it, and
it's the only person that's talking about that they went and found, because he was just there. And
like, I went and found someone who I barely knew to talk about it.
Yeah, that's journalism. You're supposed to go and find people that you don't know, because you don't know what answers you're going to get, and that gives you the true story.
And no one really even knows, you know, like, we're not even like, I want to know more about like who this dude is. Where did he serve? Like, what was his capacity in this? Like, in reading the reporting too, I was like, because I've seen this guy bounce around. He's an unsavory character as well, but it's like, I'm not saying he didn't serve or anything. I'm just like, what is your experience in this that is more worthwhile and useful than the many soldiers and Marines and Iraqis that have already been interviewed for the game? Like, why is your opinion on this any more valid, except for the fact that it says what they want you to say?
Yeah, well, that's what my problem was with that interview. Is like, I can't even finish reading it now, because I know you two know each other. And then to go look at the Twitter posting of that story, and all these other people in games media that I knew would be in there are praising their reporting. I'm like, are you serious? Like, that's an extreme conflict of interest to interview somebody for an investigative report that you know and is your friend, and you know exactly what they're going to say.
Yeah,
it's not journalism. That's activism.
No, it's ridiculous. And that's why I wanted to have Steve Bannon on to talk about, because what I was most interested in and why I wanted to talk to him cold was, I was like, is this something that anyone in Pentagon circles is even aware of? Is this something that, like, people in real military life, not fake online military life, are they? And he's like, no one gives a shit about this game. You know, they cared about it way more in 2008. In 2009, no one cares anymore, mostly because the sympathy for the Iraq war is just totally out the window, and that kind of does play a role in it. And so I agree. It's bad reporting, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I just don't feel like they threw Ryan McCaffrey under the bus for that garbage. That's kind of the disappointing thing about it. I don't care if people, and by the way, they can nail the game all they want, but when they act like censors, we don't need what's his name soldier guy to be the censor for our games. Like, I'll decide whether I want to play it or not. You have no right. It's like what Ethan Gach said at Kotaku, whether we should be debating whether the game should exist at all. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, Ethan, we shouldn't be debating that. And the fact that, again, the murderer's in the house, guys. I don't know how many more times I have to tell you, guys, the murderer's in the house. You know, like, it's not outside forces.
To clarify, the person that wrote the IGN interview very much said she's against censorship later on and all that.
Yeah, I'm sure she's.
So I think I know
I saw it too, but I don't believe her. But
yeah, I think you know, without spoiling all my op-ed that I'm working on, like, I think all the criticism towards the marketing is correct, because you know, in that IGN Unfiltered interview, if you watch the whole thing, they talk about, like, well, games need to grow up. And part of my point is, like, okay, then grow up. Stop marketing it as a tactical FPS and market it as, hey, here's this game about these stories about real people that you haven't heard from before. So I think it's just, yeah, like, you know, you criticize the game all you want, but then, you know, if we're gonna report on it, then just provide interesting perspectives on it. Like, I know what Rami thinks about the game. I know what, you know, John, I think his name's John Phipps, thinks about the game. I know what he thinks about the game. Tell me what other people think about the game.
Right. Can you find anyone else to talk about it? I found someone to talk about it in 2 seconds.
Right.
So it's not, and I'm not an insider anymore, in quotes. Mm-hmm. Nick, yeah. I want to talk to you more in the future. I want to revisit some of this stuff with you again. I want to give it a little time. I want to see how things settle in. You said something earlier, though, and to end, my audience has been good enough to me for a long time where I don't have to be scared of challenging people and saying what needs to be said and drawing conclusions based on active reporting, active commentary, and all the rest. And you had said that there's a lot of fear out there. Can you at least promise me that you're going to continue to act without that fear, and that we can talk in a few months and then figure out other ways that we might have attacked the orthodoxy with heterodox thinking? Do you think we can do that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting there. Like I said at the start, like I was never really a public person. I kind of stayed behind my work and didn't really get involved. And and a lot of the Twitters, like I stay out of all the Twitter battles. Like if I disagree with somebody, like I'm just not going to go in there and start replying to them to disagree with them publicly. I'd rather have that conversation like we're having, right, where we can just talk about it and not, because one of the things that absolutely bothers the fuck out of me on Twitter is watching people proclaim mental health advocacy and all this bullshit.
Yeah, that was John Phipps's specialty.
Yeah, and then anybody they disagree with, even if it's just the slightest of disagreements, because that's what happened to me when I got dogpiled, was they go and tweet you to their thousands of followers and start attacking you. And it's just like, you don't even know me. Like, why are you, like I would have, if we have a disagreement, let's just talk about it and work through it. If you think I'm an awful person after that, then fine, be that way. But it's just, it's a challenge, right? Because like you got to protect your own mental health on these things. Me specifically, like I'm in the crux of like, well, I'm an advocacy for good journalism, but I'm also moving more into a commentary role. And how far are we willing to step over that? And thankfully, like with the Escapists, like we've really built a team. I mean, we have disagreements all the time. If you watch the Escapist show, Jack's way far more left than I am. But we talk about these things publicly and publicly disagree about them, and that's fine. And we're really creating a team that, like, I mean, I guess to refer to like what you used to have back on IGN, like people that disagree with each other, but we also just talk about it.
Yeah, it's a nice way to be. Well, I will say, I mean, as you get more into the commentary space, I would argue that you need to be much more brave to get into the commentary space than even in the journalism space, because in the journalism space, if you don't like what you're reporting, but you're reporting honestly, at least you can kind of have the plausible deniability of like, well, this is what the data says, or this. But when you're putting your name and like your subjective stamp on something, I say that requires even more bravery. And so you're going to have to come with both barrels. I mean, it's I don't want to say your site's survival. I don't understand anything about your site's business, but
sure.
Your site's, I think, salvation can very well come in the form of being willing to do that and owning the space that comes out of that. Because what I'm seeing in political journalism, which I find really interesting, are people like Michael Tracy, Glenn Greenwald, Matt Taibbi, and others who are liberals, right? Writing only op-eds, and because like kind of mainstream leftism or liberalism, progressivism, let's say, not even mainstream leftism, but progressivism has made conversation so verboten, it's naturally attracting moderates and conservatives. And if you start putting that stuff out there, it's going to attract that audience, but it doesn't mean that that's who you are. And what these guys have managed to tap into is to say like, well, my principles and philosophies are unchanged and are moored to the ground. That it's attracting people that are more open-minded on the other side says much more about the people that used to write about me and listen to me than me. And so I think if you can have that steely resolve to understand, like, because some people are like, I don't want to attract this audience. And I was like, there's nothing wrong with this audience. This is an audience that's right now represents open-mindedness. You want them. They're the ones being demeaned and talked about badly. They didn't do anything wrong. And that can be your gain. So Nick, I don't want to give you any unsolicited advice, but I say lean into it because
I mean, that's the audience we have been cultivating on The Escapist, because I mean, we did an interview about 6 days with the lead designer of Spec Ops: The Line. And, I saw that you reached out to Rami to talk about it because he wanted to be on a platform to talk about it. Well,
and I have a huge, he just ignored me. It's like, well, no, not that platform. Okay.
Well, he ignored you and then went and slandered you on his Twitter.
Right.
And then we got called out by somebody on Twitter for not including him or somebody of Muslim descent in the Spec Ops: The Line interview. And I was like, well, we didn't want to first of all, like all we have so far is a 2-minute trailer that shows us nothing about what this project is. I have no idea what it is yet. We had an interview set up with the developers, and then Peter's comments came out and they canceled all that stuff. So our interview with the Spec Ops guy was more of a wider perspective of like, what does a developer mean when they say our game isn't political? And, you know, let's talk about, you guys made the game that's known as like the political war game. You know, what do you think about 6 Days of Fallujah? It was a great interview. People really loved it. People were talking about it. So we got called out on Twitter by somebody for not talking to Rami or someone with Muslim descent in that interview. I was like, well, I don't know why you have to call us out. We can do another interview about this very same subject with another perspective. That's how this thing works.
Yeah, God forbid. And I just want to reiterate one more time that I do not understand Rami's specific angle in to having so much skin in the game for this conflict. I'm sorry, I don't get it. This is what happens when you reduce people to characteristics. This is what happens when you reduce people to skin color and stuff. Rami is a Dutch-born Egyptian man. So he has about as much connection to what happened in Fallujah as I do, frankly. And I'm not going to, you know, sit here and necessarily want to empower that. I'm much more interested in what Iraqi developers have to say. Maybe people that were there that don't agree with the game. Who cares what Rami Ismail has to say about it anymore? Like, why is that a valuable thing? It's almost what you were saying about that John Phipps guy, where it's like, this is only valuable because it's the person within proximity to you, but there are other opinions. You know what I mean? And yeah, the guy from the Netherlands is not the guy who's going to give the valuable opinion. I'm sorry. Like, if we're going to reduce everyone and put everyone in categories, then that is certainly not a useful category for me. You know, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, well, I publicly invited him to the Escapist show, and then I DM'd him because he didn't respond to that, and then I DM'd him. He didn't respond to that to either, and then like the next day he went and liked the person calling us out and completely ignored me. So I was like, okay, like, I mean, we wanted to talk to you. We wanted to provide you a platform and inform our audience.
I'm going to give you a little bit of insight. I mean, not that you know this, it's that Rami can't defend his point of view. Like, it's not defensible. So
I think I would expose
it in 5 minutes. It would take me 5 minutes to expose it.
I think he knows a lot of Muslim developers and maybe has heard the complaints, and he acts as a voice for them. So I think, in a way, he could have informed us about like what he's been told. But I also agree, like, you know, he keeps talking about, well, we need to raise up more Muslim voices and all that. But then I also see him going and taking the podcast spots to go talk with other people. It's like, if you know these people, why are you not pushing them forward to go talk about their experiences, especially people that were there in Fallujah? Those are the people I want to hear from too. I don't think his position's invalid, but like, just practice what you preach. If you want people to hear more, then help them.
I think its validity is at best questionable, and I think that the validity needs to be tested. And the only way to test it is to come on a platform that's not hostile, because I'm not going to be like, you know, fuck you, Rami, and like, let's start there, you know. I want to ask hard questions. I want someone to accept it. I'll just reiterate, Nick, that if I was really pontificating about something over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, and then someone was like, I'm going to give you a platform to tell you what, I'd be like, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's what I didn't understand. I mean, I understand, like, people have their preconceived notions about you. They have their preconceived notions about me, but it's like, yeah, you, as far as I know, you have one of the biggest gaming podcast platforms out there. Why would you not want to take that opportunity to inform an audience about what you're talking about? Because you think they're all off. If you're that ignorant that you think everybody that listens to an X podcast is all awful people, unless it's like, you know, to me, like literally like promoting Nazism. Yeah. You know.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you can come prove me wrong. Like, I would be so anxious about that. You know, like, if I was so confident, so outspoken, such a supporter of something, man, I would use every platform available to me.
If you just surround yourself in an echo chamber where everybody agrees with you, I mean, and I agree, like that's what games media has become. And when you challenge people, it's an immediate attack. It's like, I criticized your journalism because I want it to be better. I want you to, you know, and I'm not saying I'm the perfect journalist either, but if you're going to go do these reports that I'm not doing, I want to see it good. I just want to see it be done well. So that's, you know, I try to promote good journalism whenever I see it from whoever it is. It doesn't matter to me who it's from. It's just, but I'm also, you know, I'm outspoken critic of media because I think people have really forgotten what it means to actually do journalism. And it, I guess the thing that people go back to is like, well, it's the Tumblrification of journalism, basically, and I can agree with that.
Yeah, and it's like putting a gun to your head and pulling the trigger, basically. So
well,
we're gonna see how it all goes for these people. I mean, I think.
There's a quote. It's a editor-in-chief of a website now. One of the things, it stuck with me for how many years they said it ago, but that, journalism is boring. We need to include our voice in journalism. And I'm like, you tell me the facts and the
that's
story.
Commentary.
Yeah, it's commentary. I was like, news writing I should be able to get the facts of the news and move on with my day. I don't need your thoughts about it. That's for an op-ed or what editorial or whatever you want to do with it.
Yeah, it's we'll see. I mean, I think the musical chairs is going to continue to happen. There are going to be fewer and fewer places to sit, and it's going to become more and more desperate, the death throes of a lot of these people, because at the end of the day, I really think that, like, I hate saying it this way because it's just like there are people that realize that they can't attract an audience with their content, like they can't, or they would. Why wouldn't you? Like that's the path of least resistance. So they need to find others to attack. They need to insert themselves into the things they shouldn't be inserted into and all of that. And that's just to our gain. I mean, and it's just to be me and you both, because anything on the outside is gaining. Like it's clear that these other places, again, are becoming SEO farms and commerce link farms and all. I mean, no one goes to, and I think even people's behavior with websites has changed a lot too, which is why I think, obviously. So I think that's why we need to be in these different places. But like I said, I want you to come back in a few months. I want us to see where these things stand, because I sense the battles will continue. I will continue to call. You said you wanted to call out bad games journalism because you want it to be better. I don't think it's going to get better. So now I'm really calling out because it's bad games journalism. And
I mean, because I work in games media. I try not to be like antagonistic towards people that I can't say like I have a lot of connections to like big names in media or anything, but I try not to come off as antagonistic, and I try to be friendly with everybody until they're not friendly with me.
Well, that's the way I am too, but you have to understand that.
Yeah.
Everyone has been unfriendly to me, so and I know, like, that's what I say. I have a memory of an elephant. I know what people said about me and who said what and when, and people celebrating my downfall and rooting for me to fail and not succeed. And it's like, yeah, it is personal for sure.
Yeah, it's
just you're making it easier because your content's also bad, not you. Well, their content.
Yeah, some people really I think they just live on Twitter and.
Yes.
That's how they build their platform, is by inserting their voice into every little thing and being antagonistic towards people. So I don't do that, and that my follower count I think reflects that. Like to put it in perspective, like I think last year I had 1,500 followers. Then I called out Jason Schreier, and I grew by like 1,000 followers in a week. And it's like, well, I don't want to grow my audience that way because I don't want that to be the expectation.
Yeah, I mean, my numbers pretty much stay steady, if not shrink a little bit, because. First of all, I think it's like just, I've been on the platform for so long, but I just say what I need to say. I actually think I have a reputation that's far worse than it reality is. Like, if you actually look at the things I say and tweet, like, I never just attack anyone out of nowhere. There's always history. It's up to you to know it or not.
Yeah.
But it's not like I'm just coming, out of left field, with my assailing.
That's the funny thing, because like I had some things to say about the Troy Levitt thing, and I had people in my DMs and replies talking about it, and then I would DM them. I was like, did you even watch the videos or read the articles? Nope, didn't watch or read either. I was like, well, then why are you talking about this? Like, if you're gonna have something to say on a subject, do at least the bare minimum of research and know what you're talking about.
Well, I hope you can come back. We'll talk again. And thank you for your time. Appreciate you. Everyone go check out Nick on The Escapist. And where can people follow you on Twitter and everything?
You can follow me on Twitter at NickJCal. And then, most of the time we're just doing live streams and other work on The Escapist.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of Sacred Symbols and Sacred Symbols Plus. We'll be back next time for more interviews and more solo casts. And of course, the regular show will proceed as well. So until then, goodbye. Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from Central Virginia and Burbank, California, USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Chris Raygun Maldonado. Sacred Symbols' executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level or higher on Patreon, and we're grateful for your kindness and generosity.